Welcome to the Improvising Life podcast. This is Lloyd Crawford, your host. For episode 8, we have a guest, our first of many podcast parties. We are having a chat with Shelby Melissa, who is a money mindset coach, amongst other things. And we started our conversation with this idea of playing with possibilities, and it went so many different places. So if you ever find yourself thinking about how to be an accountable system shifter, really navigating money mindset or the ways that you're given narratives in life and how to go about navigating a more truthful place where we're practicing self accountability, acknowledging our privileges, and also keeping the spirit of dreaming that a different way is possible. This might be an episode for you. It felt like a really beautiful blend of having deep conversations as well as bringing a lightness to them. So that way, again, it's something that we can approach with sustainability. And this idea of sustainability comes through a lot in terms of allowing there to be both room for a critical conversation and feel good energy. So I hope that you stay tuned and really explore some multiplicities and dualities here as we discuss not only Shelby and I's backgrounds, but also how do we really approach transitions and how do we practice being coaches and holding space for other people while acknowledging our own stories, what that means in terms of service, and how can we practice being the types of people who remain coachable even while being coaches themselves. Oh, we are live on the East Coast with Shelby Melissa.
Hi.
And this is the Improvising Life podcast. Ba, ba, ba. So in true Lori fashion, we are making shit up as we go. So I have written the numbers 1 through 6 way too small on my paper. And I'm going to spin a paper clip and a pen. Oh, you can't see, but I'm holding it up for people who aren't looking at this, but for Shelby to see. And I'm going to flick it as many times as it happens until Shelby says stop. And then based off what number it is, we will play from there. So Shelby, make whatever noise you last heard out in public, and that'll be when I start flicking, okay?
Oh. Burp, 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 burp.
All right. And then make the same sound when you want me to stop.
Okay. Burp, 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 burp.
Okay.
It's a car alarm for everybody who's listening, by the way.
Oh, I thought people were like riding by you on a bike burping. That's amazing. That's my favorite part about like, the translation for that. Okay, so when you first burp honked, it was on 5, but I was laughing and flicked again, and it went on 2. So we have 2 places to play with. I think this is like 2 different playground equipment sets, right? Yay. And of course, we can break any of these rules, but these are just guiding points. So the second tool of improvising is if so, what else? And so a brief synopsis of that is essentially once you're starting to have like an awareness of something, a relationship with something, a curiosity, you have this moment of like, if that's true or valid or has any kind of input, what else might also be true? So it's sort of like getting that deeper layer. So if you were hearing cars honking their horn, what else might be true? You might have been in traffic. You might have just been by someone who was like, get out of my way, it's Monday. Like so many things could have happened. Or they could have been burping and you've been like, that's a car horn. We don't know, right? But we're exploring it. And the 5th tool of improvising is build versus invent. I had it right the first time. I got excited. So build versus invent is this idea that we sometimes get in this place of stuckness because we're expected to always have something like novel, new, find an alternative way to do something approach, which leads to like decision fatigue and just so many things can happen. And sometimes we really forget that we already have our whole life experience to build from. So we don't always have to invent a new way out of something. We have all of these different things that we can build from. So in that example, when we were going through this little game, we were building from your day's experience. You had already heard like car horns honking. So that became a game of the rule of when I was going to spin to. You don't have to remember these. I'll just randomly be weaving them in as sort of the lenses that we're going to be chatting and playing with today.
Yay! I did write them down.
Oh, that is fine too. Just normalize it. There's no pressure.
Thank you.
Because will I even remember to look down at this later once we get going? Who knows? That's part of the mystery. It's like being the little kid on the playground where you forget you're on the playground and you're like making mud pies and everybody's on the swings and you're like, oh, that's cool. I was in my own universe. I think there's swings. What are those?
Love it.
Well, Shelby, would you like to share anything with people? That's very open-ended, but anything about what you do, your latest favorite joy practice, the last food you had that made you sad, and then what you had afterwards to feel better, anything that comes up.
Okay. Hi, I'm Shelby. You'll see me on the internet as Shelby Melissa, but you can just call me Shelby. My mom is Melissa, so if you call me Melissa, I'm gonna be like, that's weird. I will still answer to it, but like, just FYI. It's also my middle name, which is where it comes from. So that's me. I am an money mindset and energy entrepreneur, coach, mentor. So all things kind of like reprogramming is really my expertise. Specifically, we focus on money mindset and like business stuff because I work with entrepreneurs mostly, but it really ripples out into all of the areas of our life because our lives aren't like these isolated little bubbles. They're like networks and constellations of things. So it tends to ripple out. So I kind of dabble across the webs, if you will. Joy project, I think, is the other thing you mentioned. Right now we are in the beta tester phase for a course that I'm working on, and that's been super fun. I really love beta testing because I get to go in without expectation and we just get to kind of see how it goes, and we get to improvise. We get to like, okay, that didn't really work, or we don't really like that, so let's do this. So it's really a bit open-ended within a structure. And so they had 4 Q&A sessions where we'd hop on a call and just talk. And we added a 5th one. So that was really fun. And I think we might actually have more throughout the course itself, or like figure out a way to do them maybe a little bit more often, depending on the course structure as it comes out, because they're really good and I really like them. So that's my like little joy project right now. Food that made me sad. Oh, I really like food. So sometimes it's hard for like food to make me sad. Yesterday I was making, so Kyle, my husband, started it. We're making a Mediterranean orzo pasta salad. And the recipe that we had did make me a little sad because it didn't quite come out like the ones that we've gotten from the store and whatnot. So it was a little disappointment. So if we want to take that sad like thing and then break it up into the little the sad wheel, or like the emotion wheel, and it like, the first thing is like sad, and then it's got like little radiating things out from there so you can like differentiate into more feelings. Disappointed is the one we're going to choose. And so what I did is I actually ate the pasta salad after that, but what I did is I added more seasonings and some spices, add a little bit more vinegar. I'm a vinegar person. I understand not everybody is, but I like my my spicy water, if you will. And so it turned out a lot better. I think I don't like olives, but I do think having the olives in it might add something that it's currently missing. So that might be our next little bit with it, but it made me happy to like play with it, and like experiment. And I created it, and my husband, because he got it started, he like made the pasta, and then he also cut up the vegetables. And then I made the dressing, but it was fun to like kind of co-create together, even though he made it and then I came back hours later and finished it. And it was like a little project that we did together, but then also to overcome that obstacle and like actually kind of have figured out what was going wrong. Like it didn't have enough seasonings, so I added like more Italian seasoning because it was just oregano. And excuse I have a cough, I'm so sorry.
Okay, never suppress a bodily function.
Right. And so it just like it worked. I got so excited that like saliva was happening, and yeah, like thinking about this food, right? And I added some onion powder, like the dried onion powder. It just worked out so much better. So I'm very happy with it now. And then like eating it as it was like made and like got to play with it. I think this probably is an algorithm for not algorithm. What is that thing?
Oh, you know me in words.
A
So I
synonym.
have no idea.
Yeah,
Oh.
I don't know. We're gonna go with synonym, but it's like allegory. There we go. It's an allegory
Yes.
for life. I was like that Play-Doh thing with the cave, an allegory for life in this like pasta salad. So
Anytime life is experienced through literal food or food references, I feel like you're speaking to my soul. First off, thank you for sharing that. You gave so many things to play with, but firstly, I have to laugh. So, part of my process of getting ready to do brain functioning things lately is like showering right before, which I told you, Shelby, to scrub my head. And while I was in the shower, I was thinking about how the baby will be coming soon, and then how like my niece's name is Shelby. So I was like, oh, Shelby, like you, Shelby's gonna have to be like Auntie something other than Shelby. I was like Auntie Mel or something for Melissa. So I laughed when you said your mom's name was Melissa. I was like, no, I'm so glad that came up in my mind, so I could like check that off the list of like it's not that. Because then why do you keep calling me Aunt Mom? And so
yeah.
as you were sharing, I was just picturing if Aunt Mom was like a show instead of Cat Dog. So thank you for taking me on that path.
You're
Without knowing
welcome.
it.
We love Cat Dog.
Yeah, ugh, so great. And it's like a few things that you shared is like so fun because you were modeling the two tools of providing that we paperclip selected earlier. So when you were sharing about your joy of beta testing, because you're going in without those expectations, you're in this place of if so, what else? Like if I go in and we have these calls and I'm getting feedback, what else becomes possible? If suddenly there's demand for adding another session, what else becomes possible? So it's really fun to see that energy expression coming out and how that felt accessible without you feeling like you had to go in with that even as an approach, right? It's just this energetic muscle to flex that you found. Seems to offer sort of a sweet spot of being able to play with things. So that was fun on like mine, be like, oh, she's on the slide right now, And then also 52,718 brownie points are being awarded for you taking the suggestion of sad and then differentiating it for you to be disappointed, like layering in that emotional feeling based language. Like super kudos to that, because there you were building versus inventing, right? You were in the whole process of how you created that meal, right? You're like, okay, this is like the base platform, right, that I was given. Okay, cool, but it's just not hitting the way that I wanted to. So then you're building off of what oh, I like more vinegar, I like more seasonings, I like that. So like these are these little moments in life that actually lead up to the majority of our life where we're in this mode of being able to curate things and like honor our needs, because you could have just been like, oh, I'll feel bad if, and we've all been there in some capacity, oh, I'll feel bad if I change something because Kyle made it, I'll just eat it and stay sad. There might have been a point in life where that would have been yours, but being able to have that sense of wonder and mystery and start tinkering with things ended up being a way that you were able to like play with possibilities, right? You're like, how can this end up being something that I actually enjoy eating? Um,
Thank
how
you.
fun. And you're sharing out in your monologues there. We're already doing the damn thing.
Yay! I love that. I love that you reflected that back, because like I think if I was to think back, I would be like, I don't know if I was doing those things, but like the fact that you were able to go in and like think about it and reflect back to me really highlights, at least to me, and I hope to everybody else who's listening, that like we are really doing a lot of these tools. It's just becoming more conscious and aware. And then from there, looking at how we can implement them in different areas, right? So like we're already doing them to an extent. We're just adulting on autopilot and not realizing that those are the things that we're doing. So
Yeah, exactly. And then how much more access to choice do you have when it's a tool? And again, it's not about always, it's not about switching from one sort of militancy to another of like being so rigid, like, no, I have to think of which thing I'm doing all the time. But again, it's like the fact that like lighthouses, the light will like spin around and it just will like catch your attention or like change your view for just long enough. It's sort of like that of, oh, well, when I feel like I'm in a moment of needing a tool or wanting a tool, like what am I already doing? What am I already equipped with? But again, because we're autopiloting and we don't always even just have the energetic capacity to consider anything too, which is like really why I almost said pursued, but that sounds like maybe I was honking the horn at you, like driving by and Shelby, I would approach Shelby, ask if she wanted to be on the podcast, because I see you modeling the spirit of communal support and like meaning it when you say like reach out if you have something, like even if I'm not the person, I at least will like hear you, and if I know of a resource that becomes available, I'll share that. And I think that sort of one of these underlying threads that I think are really important in facilitating that shift out of autopilot is that we don't get into this place of like zombie mode by ourselves. So why do we have this expectation for ourselves that we have to get out of it by ourselves too? That's just exhausting. Like, we don't want to do that. Well, I'll
no,
speak for myself. I don't want to do that.
no. And like if we use I think it's a common analogy to be like you dug yourself into a hole kind of thing. And most of the time, like you weren't the only one digging, and so now you're expected to get out of a hole that you didn't fully dig yourself by yourself like that. No.
Yeah. Because if you think of those layers, someone had to tell you what a hole was. Someone gave you a shovel. Someone modeled like this is the proper way to do a hole. Like, oh, you're not deep enough to complain. You got to keep going further down before we listen to you. There's all these layers, and I think that also goes back to a point that you mentioned when you were sharing out about the way that you serve your community and how you're playing at this like intertwining point of all these different constellations or webs, and so I'm curious about whether you have any like reflection on when that process was first starting. And what I mean by process of like questioning some of the web elements or like transitioning out of that autopilot mode of like, oh, things are how they are, and just like what that experience was like, or anything else that comes up, because that might have been a while ago and remember
No,
stuff.
I like this. I think it goes to the like things building over time, right? So like as a teenager, I was super rebellious. So
Just a fine teenager. No.
yeah. Hi, I'm Shelby. You wouldn't know it by how I look now, but I was goth for a period of time, and I grew up at the time of emo and scene. So like I was also emo and scene for a period of time, like if you can all imagine. And so I was kind of rebellious. So I was kind of like on that like things need to change sort of wagon there, but like I didn't always realize like the ways that we could do it, right? And that's kind of like being stuck in a box and still only seeing the box and changing the like inside of the box. And so I think more of it really started coming together as I got into social work. So I graduated 2008 from high school. I'm 31 at the time that we're recording this. I'll probably still be 31 when we get it out. My birthday's in May, so I just had one. And so 2008, I graduated my undergrad, I think 2012. I started grad school in 2014 for social work. And I think that's when I started really being able to see the system and these constellations and these webs that were happening, because I was in an advanced generalist program. And what that means is like normally when you go into social work, you like prioritize being like micro or macro, which is you're working with systems or you're working with people. And then if you're working with people, you can go into like families, you can go into substance abuse, you can go into like various things within there, right? You kind of like specialize down. As an advanced generalist, you were just kind of on all the things, right? At a graduate level, because the undergrad programs were generalist programs. So I really started seeing the way that this web and these constellations started to impact each other, because I started to have knowledge of both and like simultaneously, right? And then as I got into my internship, just for background information, I worked with women who dealt with addiction, but these women also had children between the ages of 5 and 18. And a lot of times what we were bumping up against was community resources available to them. I worked on a team, so there was a case manager, a therapist, and a recovery coach. And then I was the intern. So these people had like 4 people on their team. And there was one in particular where the case manager was taking this individual to not really the Social Security office, but like her food stamps kept getting cut off, her resources kept getting cut off for like no reason. Like it was just like it was there and then it wasn't there. So they were going down like once a month to get her back on to the resources that she needed. And it really like highlighted that had the people that we were working with had access to resources and on a level that like wasn't available to them based on the structure of things, right? That like they wouldn't have so many problems, quote unquote. Like, you know, like we all have things that we work through and whatnot, but there wouldn't have been so many barriers, and the fires that we were putting out during every session were really caused by the system. You can't put out a fire if like it's lava, right? Like you're like, okay, I'm gonna put out this corner, and then the lava reignites it. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna pour water on again, lava reignites it. You know, like it was just like, so it really like highlighted that to me, that it's not just an individual. Like there was no way the people as an individual, and even like the care team that they had, right? Like now we've added 4 or 5 other people, or added 3 or 4 people. So now we have a group of 4 or 5 people, right? Couldn't dig out of this hole, right, on their own. It really needs a network of people. And so that really highlighted that to me. And then as my husband has gone through grad school, and as we've talked and as I've listened to other people talk, so you might see my picture in the in the information and in the post for this podcast, because you can't see me like right now. I'm a white woman. I have very unique experiences based on those things. I'm a queer, cis, white woman, you know, and so I have very specific experiences, and hearing and learning from other people who have different experiences and how they also emphasized community care and not just self-care, right? And that I think was also a really big turning point, was like listening to women of color, to trans queer people and everybody else, and building that, extending that constellation, right? So I think that got like real serious, but I think I answered it. Did I?
Well, firstly, there's never any pressure on my end to answer questions. I usually forget what I even ask, but yes, you did. And also, I think too, anytime you're sharing a point of reflection, I always find it so valuable just to hold the space for you to then be in that experience again. Because sometimes we don't revisit things unless we're prompted to, right? And that's something that I've spoken about a little bit, about why we can learn to be so averse towards awareness, because when we're in that autopilot mode, something sort of wakes us up, right? Something gets our attention. So awareness becomes this sensory overload moment, right? Because we were then suddenly feeling like, oh crap, I already was juggling too many balls. Now there's something that I have to actually put my focus on, and I'm realizing I already dropped all the balls, but I still thought I was juggling, right? So like those flashback type of questions, I always appreciate what comes up. And I'm glad you took it to, you said serious, but it really is a reality level, right?
Mhm.
Because it was not only reality when you experience it, but it's literally a reality of millions of people, right?
Mhm.
And since unfortunately I don't know how to have those millions of people on my podcast yet, being able to open up that door and normalize, acknowledge having that conversation feels so important. And what you were sharing reminded me of this commonly, quote, quote, commonly used example of the price of being poor that's in a lot of like sociology classes, right? About how
Mhm.
it's so expensive to be poor because you're not able to have access to something like resource wise that will last a long time, right?
Mhm.
So people say, oh, well, like you can get work boots at Walmart for $20, go get a job. Okay, but those work boots last for a month and a half. So each year you're constantly putting out maybe hundreds of dollars towards work boots, where if you had access to different resources, or like if capitalism didn't suck ass for most people, you could just invest in a high quality pair of boots once, because for someone with financial privilege, you can buy a 300 pair of boots off the bat and they last 30 years. So if you're coming from that mentality of just go get your pair of boots and work, assuming you even have boots to pull yourself up on your bootstraps, like that idea, it takes out the emotional, energetic labor of constantly having to go back. So when you were mentioning that individuals struggles with having to go back to the system, or like, I really appreciate you using the idea of the lava, like to the volcano every month and say, well, wait, we had this agreement, you weren't going to be like burning down my house, and you're doing it again. Like that takes up so much time, energy, like life force capacity at all, and someone who has access to privileges don't have to put out that much, right? So it's
Mhm.
like there's this idea too of like life is only as livable as the systems allow, really, and that's the position that we're in. So I do appreciate that you took it to that level. um and so with you sharing out too, like you sort of put this gift wrap bow around your reflection about community care. So I'm really curious about what your experience has been as a money mindset mentor, where, and I know that this is a stance you take because you shared, like where you're normalizing the fact that, we get our money mindsets from somewhere, right? Again, we didn't dig that hole ourselves. So how do you find um, yourself sort of holding space for the individual that you're working with, because it's their experience that they're coming to you with, but also the fact that this is something that's tied to so many other layers, and then holding that space. Like what does that experience feel like for you?
Mhm. So I like that question. And it gets me to like reflect for a moment. So I think for me, I'm going to like reflect something that you were just doing is really like holding a space of not being wrong. As you were like, yeah, if you actually answered the question or not, like, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you answered it in the way that whatever, right? It needed to be answered, or you wanted to answer it, or needed to come through, or, like, etc. So I really like end up holding space for them not being wrong. We normalize the systems, right? And so we talk about, not every time, but like for me, it's really holding space that like they're not wrong. Their family members weren't probably wrong. Their teachers weren't probably wrong. We have this system that's been perpetuated through people. And I'm not a philosopher. I am philosophy adjacent. So I know a little bit about epistemology, but we think of this as like they didn't have the epistemic resources, like parents, your mentors, people who gave you these programs. They didn't have the same epistemic resources that you have now. And so I don't judge, I don't hold space for anybody being wrong. I allow that person to make those decisions because they're the one in that experience. And so I also like, you want to be mad and blame so and so, like, cool. I'm like, that's your business, not my business. I'm here to hold space for you to like heal. And sometimes we have to blame somebody in order to heal. We have to like project it out so that we can deal with it, which is why I use journaling a lot, because it gets it outwards. So we hold that space of like not being wrong and understanding that like you live in a constellation of things. We can also say that like you live in a swamp, right? And that swamp comes with, hi, we're Shrek, we're living in our swamp. That comes with certain things, right? So like now there's like frogs and there's algae and there's other plant life and there's bugs and there's other things, right? And so like you are just doing the best you can given that environment, right? Everybody's environment looks a little bit different, but in this swamp case, like, yeah, you're doing the best you can with the like algae water that you have, you know, that's been standing there, because swamps usually aren't like too flowing, they're a little stagnant. So like holding space that like you're doing the best you can, like the system will change over time as we all change and as we all hold space for that and as we all work towards that. But also letting them know that like, yeah, you will quote unquote have a relapse because all the messaging is telling you otherwise. You know, as best as you're filtering that water from the swamp, sometimes you'll get a little algae or like a bug in there because that's the nature of the environment, right? So I try to hold a lot of space for that, and I try to also impart to them holding space for that themselves as well. So it's kind of like, you're not wrong, and like this is messy, so it will continue to be messy. We hold space for like hope and change, but knowing that like in this moment it is messy and that is okay, and it's not a blame and shame on you. We don't hold space for blame and shame. Like we can put that onto the system itself, but not onto you, because you're trying to survive, and that's like the utmost, like most important thing is surviving.
Yeah. I want to tease out a few things from that, and thank you for sharing. And also the sense that I have of like this our time together already today, of you like modeling that too, and the like practicing, right? Because you know I often think of how so my background like professionally, the word is so like, you know, on paper what people see is, you know, I've worked with youth literally since I was like 11 and started babysitting, so I'm 30 now, so 19 years I've worked with youth in some capacity, you know. And so there's this idea that, you know, like where adults would say like, do as I say, not as I do, which is like exact bullshit, because child development shows like you're going to do what is modeled to you. And so like modeling holding that space, so like I just feel that it's like how can you do that. And so one of the other things that came through with that you're sharing is like this idea, and these are just words that came out, it wasn't words that you used, but of like, what is unprescriptive accountability and what does it look like, right? So it's like you're sharing like, okay, there's not going to be a place of judgment or saying, oh, it's wrong to hold this grudge, or don't feel this way, you know, but then also modeling accountability, and that you almost then provided your own take on that, because then you were sharing out about journaling as one of the tools. So something else that came through, I just want to reflect back to you, is how perhaps in the work you do, journaling becomes a less problematic means of projecting our issues to the surface, right? We could be calling everyone that's ever owed us $5 and been like, you're a bitch, you should have given me my milk money back, like you're the reason that I because petty Miss Prime, which is my alter ego, has had those thoughts towards you know, like self-disclosing. But journaling, when we're thinking about harm reduction, right, and restorative practices and community care, how journaling is almost one of those accountability tools where you can start to see what actually could be in my control, what can I actually contribute to the system, and doing that in a way that's less problematic towards other people in your community. So I just wanted to highlight that also felt like you're, again, modeling this idea of being unprescriptive, but also having accountability, and that it's not then taking like vengeance out, which again can be really also a normal experience, because that is what we experience. I did have to laugh. I'm going to celebrate myself that I survived Shelby's analogy of swamps because I have this fear of puddles. They are stagnant. No, it's okay. It's like the fear where I'm like, I will avoid them. I know I'll survive them because puddles are just pools of stagnant bacteria water. So you actually used a really great example because that is the feeling that I've had in my money mindset relationship with Shelby now. Because I'm always like, hey, Shelby, I'm feeling like I can guide other people to the tools, but I just need a reframe moment. Thank you. You know, but yes, so that example though, I think makes it really tangible, right? Because first off, everyone's gonna have their own reaction to swamp. So mine was like more cryptic, even though like watching Shrek, like love Shrek, like that is fine, but the actual being thinking of it as an ecosystem. Um, but again, since it's an ecosystem, it's even in a place of we don't need to judge the algae or the slime or the, like swamps exist and don't have those currents or ripples for a reason, right? They don't want to be a swamp. So it was just really full circle moment of weaving together again, like how you're practicing with the intention and the thought process behind it. And I think an example of how, like intention never negates impact, but how when you're having a relationship with both of those components, again, you're getting towards a place of more equity and making sure a ball is still in a client's court, right? And that they're not then just being coached and it's not actually interactive. So I just wanted to reflect that back to you.
And I'm so
Yeah, because I
sorry.
often think we don't. Oh no, it's not. You don't. I'm just laughing because like I was literally the kid where like people would be like, "It's raining out, let's go splash puddles," and I'd be screaming right away, like, "Get away from me!" Like I was
It
not the
is
puddle kid.
true. No, it's true. Like, okay, we're gonna get off topics for a minute, but like the pictures that you see of flooding and like the standing water and people are like walking through it, I'm like, stop, no, like don't like I know
Yeah.
people have to like this is the other part of it
Yes.
though. People have to live their life and they still have to like I have the visceral image of like when New York was flooding and so like it was flooding in the
Ways, right?
yeah.
You're thinking
Yeah,
that
like
image. Yeah.
yeah, and people are like walking through it, and I'm like, no, like please don't. But like they still have to get to work, they still have to get home, they still have to like
And the
do all the
systems are
human
saying,
things.
"Oh, that's cute that there's a natural disaster. We still need
Mhm.
you to be in autopilot and show up so someone can go get their McFlurry." But yeah, no. So I accept your apology, and also there is not a need for it because I I have worked through the shutdown mode of that fear a long ago. Also, I just laugh. No, and I always appreciate moments like that feel very like humility based or humble.
Mhm.
Those words are interchangeable, right? Yeah, a humble moment.
Yeah.
Um, just because it reminds me of how different and unique a human experience can be in terms of like what makes us feel our feelings, right?
Mhm.
And again, back to the point of like awareness is shocking it in. Like I could have been glazed over and been like, oh, okay, yeah, this was an interview, whatever, like I could have been in some weird, sad place, which I mean, also like if you're in that place, people take a break. You don't have to make a podcast episode that day. No, but it could have been somewhere else. And then you said something been like, oh no, like, and then that would have then been like, we're done right here, that could have been one of the ways that played out. So I appreciate moments where yeah, the universe just gives those little moments for me to acknowledge my own growth too. And I think that's something that our societies and structures definitely don't want us to do because
Mhm.
then we'd be seeing how we're shifting the tides of these networks, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to go back to modeling, it's also a great moment to like model to everybody like impact and intention, like you were just saying, right? Like my intention is not to trigger anybody in any sort of way like that, but the impact can still be there. And so we have to have that moment where it's like, I am sorry. And if you were in a position where like you were glazed over or whatever, like it would be on me to also be aware of that because I caused that, right? And to be like, okay, what do we need to do? And for me to be part of the solution, should you desire me to be part of the solution? And it's okay if you were like, no, like I need to go do my own thing, right? But then it is also on me to like remember, okay, don't get into puddles and swamps with Lori because that's not
Yeah.
sustainable for her, right? It's not, like what she desires. And So like there's a boundary there, and for me to honor that boundary. So I think hopefully everybody can kind of like take that from this as well, is that like
Yeah, no, and I think too that that's like, episode is just circle back episode. No, but it circles back to about the part of what community. So like, even if because I realized too, we didn't have a literacy moment, if you don't know what community care is, you don't even have to define it from like this is what Webster's dictionary shares. Like, we're modeling it in this sense too, of that accountability, of that reciprocity, of acknowledging how there can be these embedded like power layers, right? So as a guide or a mentor, even as an interviewee in this case, for an episode, like there can be all of these layers of what feels accessible from each person and what feels expected and all that. So like this episode hopefully is an exploration of what community care and consideration towards others can be in practice. And again, knowing that like perfection and like getting it right, like never happen. Like that's not even a landmark, right? It's again, like, because then you go into autopilot, right? And this is something that I speak with my my yoga mentor, Felicia Savage Friedman, often about how can I be the least problematic as possible is how I approach each day. So even with the language where I was saying your journaling practice is a less problematic way, right? It's not about, especially as white women, us being unproblematic, because if we even think we can be unproblematic, we're suddenly not coachable anymore. When you're not coachable anymore, you go right back to being as problematic as possible. So it's these moments of what's just the less problematic option, And to your point, you mentioned some of like asking out, like offering the apology, holding space in case I'm like, I need a 10-minute break now, and letting that. And in that moment too, it's like, what is happening is in providing the sense, because we're saying like, this is the moment we're in right now. That's cute if we had an itinerary or something, but like there's human needs in this moment and how can we relate to those?
Yeah, no, exactly. And it goes back to, there's a word and I think it's gone now. Hold on, let me get there. Community care, modeling. There was some other piece. Can you synopse me like what you just said again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, again, this is the point where I'm like, I don't know what I said. I'll go back and listen to myself. Really just the idea that when we're actually in the perfect.
I got it. Thank you. You're awesome. You just bringing back up the energy of what we were talking about without having to say anything. Harm reduction.
Okay.
Like that's basically what you're talking about is harm reduction, right? So, and that's something that came to me through my work with substance abuse, right? Is harm reduction. Instead of like, not everybody's going to be at the place where they can like completely abstain for whatever reason, right? A lot of people use substances to cope. You take that coping mechanism away, now you have to deal with the trauma, the anxiety, the depression, et cetera, right? So harm reduction. So we did some work with the Red Project in Grand Rapids where they do harm reduction. So you have clean needles, you have safer crack kits and things like that so that you're not transmitting diseases. They got people Narcan and naloxone, which are the same thing. I think one's just a generic for the other. But it's harm reduction. And so it's like looking at like, yes, I come from a place of privilege and power in society in relation to others. I have oppression too, yes. But also I have privilege and power. So how can I do harm reduction given the power and privilege that I have? And like same thing as like a teacher in a classroom, right? You have power and privilege over the students. As a nanny, as a daycare worker, as somebody working with children, you have power and privilege over them. So how can you do harm reduction? As a mentor, right? There's an inherent, as you were just saying, power imbalance. So how can we harm reduction that? So I just want to like re-highlight that for like everybody, because I thought that was really poignant. And maybe that's another way, like another way to think about it, harm reduction and like, how can I be as least problematic as possible? Like there is no zero sum given the structure in the world that we live in. So how can we reduce?
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought that back. And I'm also really relieved just to share that all I had to say is when you, and then it came back to you because I was like, oh, so that, thank you, celebrate, jazz fingers. well, and too, in that spirit of harm reduction as well, it's like, if we are only at a place where we like are living life and we only have the capacity to adult on autopilot, if that's the only capacity we ever have access to, we don't have an awareness of harm, whether that's harm going outwards towards others, harm towards ourselves, harms we're experiencing from others. And so sometimes I know in my own experience, it has been really hard to make a shift when I'm doing it for myself, right? Because I was raised to be a very functional people pleaser. That was my survival mechanism through life, of take care of others. So doing things for myself, it's still some days where I have to remind myself it's for something, like I have to tie it to something else, like my dogs need me to wash the dishes today, you know, like, and that is one of the ways that I hold space for myself. But I'm curious, and again, in the spirit of not putting this out as a definitive answer, I'm just so curious about whether that idea of harm reduction could be sort of an on-ramp for someone else's experience, and even, in my own, of when the moments we're doing it for myself is not accessible, can that harm reduction lens be something that makes a certain decision, or having an awareness, or being, in what I call relationship mode instead of situationship mode, being interactive with life, if that could be somebody something, right? Is in the spirit of harm reduction, what does that afford me for the next 5 minutes of like my energetic capacity to be aware right now? So I'm really glad you circled that back for us.
I love that. I love that because it's like a both and, like you yourself are not removed from, but also you matter too, so like it's like a both and so it's just bringing awareness to the different dynamics.
Yeah, because I often see like, like, and I'm laughing because I just laugh at myself a lot, but I'm not laughing
Yeah.
towards what I'm about to say, is that there are people who see other people's auras and colors and right, like that's their energetic experience. But when I was first starting my process of entertaining that there could be something that's not so like textbook in life, right? And shifting out of awareness, I realized like the way that I experienced interacting with other humans was like, we're all just ping ponging shit back and forth to each other. Like, it's not even a ball. We just got little turds and we're just chucking them and then wondering why everyone is so miserable, because who wants shit flying at them all the time, But again, that's because we're in this reactive mode, and harm reduction is not even a thing like in our consideration at all. And so I was just giggling to myself of being like, of re-sentimenting and allowing myself to revisit that feeling of like, oh, that analogy of ping ponging shit back and forth to each other. Yeah. When it came to, it's like, oh, that's clever, whatever, and took it as mentally like a valid enough answer, a way to talk about it. But like actually feeling that feeling of like, that is often what my experience has been when there hasn't been the presence of harm reduction or community care, or really just the capacity to imagine anything other than what systems are asking us to do on autopilot to keep perpetuating them. So we're just ping pong shit.
Yeah. I like that analogy. Yeah. Because one of Kyle's favorite ones is like people shitting the bed and then like ignoring that there's like no shit on the bed. And he's like, I don't want this bed. I don't want to lay here with you because it's a shit bed.
You're like, well, 5 hours ago it wasn't, so that should be good enough for now. And you're like, but actually, like, it's not. Oh gosh. So we're at the point of time in Loy's life where I reflect on one of my wobbliest skills are transitions and how to end things, because in my mind things don't end, they just continue in different ways. So that is me saying I still haven't found a way to denote time and that things are wrapping up. And so I'm just want to model that myself. And what's funny is I even remember asking you this before months, maybe even a year ago, Shelby, about how to do that with client work. And you had offered like having a sort of timer thing, being like, okay, 5 minutes, do you have, but it's still, I forget that it's cool. So similarly to how we started with a paperclip questioner game, we're going to spin it one more time And whatever you land on, I'm just going to ask a random closing S question that has whatever comes up. Okay. We're going to play one more time. So this time, your start noise can be, what would your cat say to, if you know, what would a cat say to the person honking the car horn? Okay. What would that type of cat reaction sound like?
Okay, I'm trying to think of my cat.
Yeah, only you know your cat, so
I know.
get personal here.
Yeah. Okay, he's kind of like, I know this is not going to be accurate, and that's like okay, because it like takes me a couple tries. So we're just briefly, this is kind of like my cat. He's like,
okay, I'm gonna start flicking. Okay.
So like when he's kind of angry, he's like,
all right, I'm still flicking. So whenever
okay,
he's done. Okay. All right, we got 6.
Hey.
Yes. And as a side note, my childhood cat Frankie, whenever she was in heat, we would know because couldn't sleep all night. She'd be like, "Row, row." So whenever my sister doesn't answer my phone calls, sometimes I would leave her voicemails and just be like, "Row, row," and she would like know that meant I was like, "What else do you have in life that's so important?" Granted, now I understand she's like keeping humans alive, but when we were younger, I would just leave cat voicemail.
Yeah. Each cat's like a little bit different too. So like, so my dad has 3 cats. And that was Magic. He's kind of like my cat, his cat. And then there's Grayson. He's like he's got like a little high pitch. And sometimes he doesn't even meow when he like goes to meow. And then Brave is
just comes out.
yells. So he's more like and then my mom has a cat and her name's Bet, and she has a similar kind of like yell, but it's not quite the same kind of yell. And so it's like so like they each have like their own like vocal range and like vocalizations. It's great.
So, yeah, I also want to congratulate and celebrate my 3 dogs. Oh, one is staring, who are sleeping through this. And normally when I make animal sounds, they're like, "Are you in crisis?" Hershey was staring at me. She just wanted to check. I'm okay, thank you. But we got tool 6, which is the final tool of I've got your back. So considering we went to a lot of different places and spaces, how are you going to have your back today? What are you going to do after our time today that's going to help you feel like you have your back? And what's something that I can do to have your back?
Oh, yay. What am I going to do to have my own back? I'm going to drink some water because I've been drinking coffee and I tend to feel dehydrated in my mouth when I drink coffee.
You get fuzzy teeth too.
My tongue starts to feel really dry.
I think of that as my mouth puddle mode. It's the same type of, I'm extending the heart, but yes.
Thank you. Yeah, so I don't like it. So I'm gonna drink some water. And I'm actually gonna do that right now. Good prompt.
Okay, everyone, let's hear, how does she drink? Oh, pretty quiet. I have a friend, Alicia Donyan, who has an amazing gulp. Like she calls it her, I'm gonna use the wrong words, but like her cartoon gulp. Like she should be the sound animation for drinking. It's every yoga class she teaches, everyone's like, "Wow, you have like the most noticeable gulp." Hi, Alicia, if you're hearing this, your gulp is great.
That's awesome.
Well, let's celebrate Shelby taking care of her needs. Round of applause. And how can I have your back?
Well, I know we're gonna like talk after this anyway, because like you and I have stuff to talk about. So that's how you're gonna have my back today. Because and like a greater community care, right? Because this isn't gonna just be a me thing. If it works out, it's an invitation. So that's how you're gonna have my back today is we're gonna talk and you're gonna give consideration, or it might just be a straight no, and that's totally okay. But because you're open to talking, you have my back. So.
Yay. Well, everyone who joined with us, we hope you had fun playing. And I said we, but I will let Shelby. Do you also hope that they fun playing?
Okay. No, yeah, you can speak for me there.
And you can also have your own experience. And if you want to share out that experience, you can do so. If you want to reach Shelby, her website is shelbymelissa.com, right? And you're on Instagram at Shelby Melissa.
Mhm.
If I remember how to tech properly, this will be in the episode notes. Oh, they'll be there. And it will also definitely be on my Instagram at improvide.with.lori. We're going to make a little graphic with our heads floating awkwardly in space and time. So you can also find her that way. Thank you so much, Shelby. I appreciate you. We went a lot of fun places. My paperclip feels very appreciated and valued. It had just been sitting on my
Appreciate it.
idly. So we made dreams happen for a lot of different beings today.
Love it. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. And I think I'm going to extend this. I might be overstepping a little bit, but I think everybody should share with us what they're going to do for themselves today too after listening to this episode.
Yes.
So you can shout us out on Instagram, or you can go and comment on the graphic that Lori is going to create and that you'll be seeing, and tell us what you did for yourself to have your back today.
I will say that was not overstepping. That was really graceful puddle jumping over. So that was great. Yes. Invitation, interact with us. We're humans and we would love to hear what your experience was. So until next time, we're both going to end with just random cat noises, and that's how we're going to finish our episode together. So in honor of Frankie, rest in peace, I will be making her sound. Maybe you want to do magic sound. We're going to do some Frankie and Magic show that unfortunately never made it to Vegas.
Made it to my Vegas.
That's what this is, the closing number at my Vegas. This is our ending skit. So a 1, 2, 3, 4. We hope that you enjoyed that episode as much as we did making it. Again, you can reach and soak in Shelby's really transformational thoughts about money mindset, amongst other things, on our Instagram at Shelby Melissa, and also her website is shelbymelissa.com. Our next episode is going to be returning to the tools of improv writing with tool number 5, build versus invent. And I do want to thank you for your flexibility. It might seem like we're hopping around episodes and going through tools, but then solo episodes, and then I almost said group episodes. Yeah, with guests and participants. But that has been what has been exciting for me, is really following where the energy is going. And so here's a big permission slip to do things in a nonlinear way. If that's what you're excited to do and you're feeling a sense of wonder of what if I don't have to follow a script per se? What if I can actually do things in the way that I want to do them and really be more in the moment? So I'm really glad we've been on this experience together. And if you would like to reach out, again, you can email me at improving101@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram at improvide.with.lori. And also, be on the lookout. I have some offerings, again, coming out. My husband, who's amazing, and I'm biased, is going to be helping me get things more formalized, whether that be a website or landing pages, so that way it's not just me saying, hey, reach out or DM me for services. They'll actually be there in a more tangible way. And so I am sharing that with you with the hope that you'll join the ride however you feel like joining it with me. As always, have a razzle-dazzle day, and if that doesn't feel accessible, you can put an F on front and have a razzle-dazzle day. See ya!